Hello and welcome. My name is Kelly McGee and this is my presentation called Internet of Things Forensics, Methodologies, Challenges, and the Future of IoT. In a world becoming more and more connected through technology, the main driving force behind this evolution of communication and data sharing is the Internet of Things. What is the Internet of Things? IoT refers to all the devices that are interconnected between each other and connected to the internet by using various standardized communication. As technology evolves, more and more devices or appliances are becoming smart and are then able to connect to the internet and other devices. IoT is made up of a combination of major technology areas, including but not limited to cloud computing, mobile devices, computers and tablets, sensors, and RFID. IoT is a dynamic and heterogeneous environment that is made up of billions of connected devices that are capable of communicating with other devices across different networks and frameworks. What is IoT forensics? IoT forensics is a framework using digital forensics on IoT devices to investigate cybercrime perpetrated on an IoT system. IoT forensics attempts to bridge the overarching scope of IoT systems that may include billions of sensors, chips, devices, machines, and software. Due to the complex nature of IoT, many traditional digital forensics methods and techniques alone are not sufficient to perform reliable investigations on IoT devices. For that reason, investigators need to be able to implement digital forensics best practices when developing and carrying out their examination, while paying careful attention to the unique characteristics and demands of the IoT online environment. As IoT is continually changing, current forensic methods and techniques are being adapted to fit the needs of the complex structures created by IoT. An IoT forensic investigator must be knowledgeable on the nature of IoT, including the challenges and difficulties, and have the proper equipment and tools to conduct a reliable and sound forensic examination. A couple of IoT forensic methodologies that we will look at today include mapping the IoT ecosystem, IoT forensic steps, digital provenance, and ethical hacking. When preparing for an IoT forensic investigation, it is important to prepare and outline the nature of the case and the IoT system involved. A forensic investigator must map the IoT ecosystem that will be examined to determine the details of the case, such as devices within the network and if they can be seized, types and amount of digital evidence, and the types of hardware, software, and specifically operating systems. The first layer is the interface layer, which consists of various application programming interfaces or APIs and methods for content retrieval. APIs and account functions are accessed and analyzed by forensic investigators through fingerprint collection or other forms of user credentials. With this layer, investigators can identify potential suspects through biometric evidence or personal login information. The second layer is the service layer, which illustrates revenue and distribution models, allowing investigators to retrieve and use service level agreements, SLAs, to identify services rendered and the nature of users' business on a given platform. The network layer deals with the complexity that is created with the usage of the internet, smart devices, data storage on both hardware and the cloud, data collection or retrieval, security and privacy issues, usage of social media and the related privacy policies, and the collection and analysis of evidence logs. Within this layer, investigators need to obtain the source and destination addresses, flow of information, and malicious programming details that are revealed through log analysis. Lastly, the sensing layer is the heart of the IoT system, or the tangible pieces that make up the things that are the Internet of Things. This includes sensors, smart objects and devices, connection media, and other hardware. At this level, forensic investigators can use cache or memory data of the IoT hardware for analysis and determine the physical location and the use of IoT. This IoT ecosystem framework aids in the planning and mapping of forensic investigations. Forensic investigators can determine the types of IoT devices they are expecting to examine within a network, how the data is stored on the hardware or on the internet, what applications or software is being used, and the security and policy levels for users on the program. After mapping out the network of IoT devices that will be investigated, an IoT forensic investigator will carry out the traditional forensic steps with a focus on IoT needs and elements. The identification of devices and connections within an IoT ecosystem, as shown in this figure, is the first step and perhaps the most important in starting an IoT investigation. Accurately identifying each IoT device within a network can become difficult when each device can physically and digitally vary in volume and scale. Some devices can be relatively small and seemingly insignificant compared to its larger, complex IoT ecosystem, but every node or device that is interconnected within an IoT system is important and could be used as a source of can be a source of vulnerability and have incriminating data stored within its memory. Though in some cases temporal logs may not be available for analysis and some areas of the network cannot be examined, IoT investigators need to find and collect as much relevant evidence that is available to them and map out and recreate a digital image of the IoT system. One of the biggest challenges for an IoT forensics investigation lies in preservation. Preservation of an entire digital crime scene is difficult with such a dynamic environment with varying hardware, software architectures, resources of power and memory, and unreliable or sometimes non-existent logs that we see in IoT. Without the proper tools, access, or professional skills to be able to access and preserve the IoT forensic image, preservation can be very difficult or sometimes impossible. The same goes for the analysis of IoT systems and the data and evidence that is collected. Without proper tools, conducting examinations on the collected evidence is almost impossible. When working with potentially large online IoT ecosystems, there will be a large amount of data, including unnecessary data, that can test the capacity of the investigator and their knowledge, tools, or laboratory or workstation abilities. Forensic investigators may have access to too much or too little evidence that is needed to identify a hacker, but being able to sort through the data and information to find material evidence that is relevant for an investigation is the mission of an investigator. Lastly, the presentation step of the forensic investigation will be the culmination of the findings of each of the previous steps. If working with a criminal case, an IoT investigator can serve as an expert witness in a court case. If hired privately to investigate vulnerabilities within an organization's corporate IoT network, an IoT investigator must be able to explain their findings accurately and clearly for the use of handling a civil dispute or to shape and develop corporate policies. If an IoT forensic investigator can successfully collect, preserve, and analyze the evidence within an IoT ecosystem, presentation of the evidence should be easy and reach the investigation goals of the examiner. Digital provenance is another forensic method that can be used within an IoT system. It refers to the record of information flow within a computer system that is used to assess the origin of data, its quality, and validity. Now being applied to cybercrimes within IoT, digital provenance is being used as a means to detect and explain intrusions within a network. Digital provenance records are shown in graphs that map the causality relationships between objects that compose a complex system, which perfectly describes the ecosystem of IoT. Provenance graphs can be used by IoT investigators in their analysis of evidence, allowing them to understand where, when, how, by whom, and why data is being used. If interwoven into IoT system frameworks, digital provenance could assist in the preservation step of forensics, as well as a capture mechanism to ensure completeness, accuracy, and trustworthiness of digital forensic data and evidence. Ethical hacking is a valuable tool across digital forensics to step into the role of a hacker and test the device or system for its vulnerabilities. Ethical hacking has been used as a tool to explore the deep insecurities within IoT, and ethical hackers have found that most devices' level of security is inadequate and sometimes non-existent, which is alarming when many devices hold users' personal information such as credit card details, health information, or system credentials. According to Billy Rios, one of the world's top ethical hackers, many computing devices were originally designed for closed systems and are not equipped for the hardware, software, iOS demands of an online connected IoT system. For that reason, developing technology with the hope that security will simply catch up has been a major theme within IoT's evolution, also revealing a main point of compromise for those systems, which is security. Next, we will look at the challenges of IoT forensics. When devices are sending and receiving data over the internet, there are security vulnerabilities that arise. But with the scale and interconnectivity of IoT, the risks rise exponentially. The main challenge and concern surrounding IoT is security. By nature, IoT systems are more vulnerable and susceptible to security threats. The data and information needed for many devices to properly and effectively function are sometimes innately personal, such as information used with wearable technology or healthcare IoT. As technology companies continue to grow their repertoire of IoT possibilities, there is more of a focus on innovation, specifically rapid innovation, to stay on top of the IoT market. The trade-off with that innovation, however, has always been security, as the benefits of the newest IoT connected devices overshadow the need and urgency of heightened security measures. This lack of security and the existence of vulnerabilities within IoT systems is directly related to IoT forensics and the prevalence of IoT-related cybercrimes. With the example of a network found at a typical modern home, an investigator may come across a mobile phone, a computer, a smart television, potentially a smart home security system, and other small devices that are interconnected with each other on a home network or on the internet. Just among these devices alone, there could be several different brands, platforms, frameworks, and data saving and sharing capabilities. The next two challenges of IoT forensics are the lack of standardization and scalability within IoT devices. A single IoT system can house different proprietary data formats, methods of communication, and large amounts of data that can or need to be extracted with a wide range of devices that can become objects of interest within an IoT investigation. This creates security risk for users who are unaware of the varying data formats or privacy settings across their interconnected IoT devices, as well as create challenges for IoT investigators who need to accurately map and identify, and especially hard to preserve such a dynamic online environment. Next is the potential misuse of data. IoT device users may wonder how and why is my data being used. When dealing with IoT devices, we traditionally only saw tech companies providing IoT solutions, but now as IoT becomes more widespread across different industries, chip and small computer manufacturers are now benefiting from IoT becoming used in other markets and industries. Who then becomes the holder of your data? The product manufacturer or the chip manufacturer? In the realm of interconnectivity within IoT, data becomes so heavily stored and shared, and the flow of information sometimes becomes skewed, and IoT forensics must make it their goal to recreate those online communications if dealing with a compromised system. Regardless of the type of cybercrime, whether it's a hacker or a corporation such as Cambridge Analytica exploiting personal data of users, security around personal data has become a growing concern for IoT device users as suspicions of surveillance or corporate use of personal data grow with the prevalence of IoT systems. So what can we expect for the future of IoT? There is a lot of growth anticipated for IoT over the next few years and into the next decade. IoT has significantly increased the number of smart devices and intelligent autonomous services and has led to the growth of cloud infrastructures for data transfer, storage, and analysis. We can expect manufacturers and technology companies to turn to IoT technology and connections across industries and fields such as agriculture, advertising and media, automobiles, oil and gas, public safety, security management, energy management, healthcare, manufacturing, and telecommunications, to just name a few. Some data points and pretty interesting predictions and expectations for IoT include, currently 127 devices are connected to the internet every second. 41 billion IoT devices are expected to connect globally by 2027. To support that 41 billion IoT devices, it is expected that 79.4 zettabytes of data are going to be produced, and on the flip side need to be supported. 1.9 billion 5G subscriptions are expected as IoT grows. The home IoT market is expected to grow to $53.45 billion by 2022. 70% of cars will be connected to the internet by 2023, and the healthcare IoT market is expected to grow to $140 billion by 2024. The future of IoT has its implications on IoT security and forensics. IoT devices and capabilities are drastically changing the way we communicate and function online rapidly, and many times users and digital forensics professionals are left playing catch-up to those effects on society. The expected growth of the IoT must be met with forensic methods and practices fitting for the scope, volume, and capabilities of IoT devices in coming years. Security consultant Bruce Schneier warns of the dangers to society with the reckless expansion of IoT. He explains how the novelties and promises of IoT technology can lead to security and privacy catastrophe. For this reason, Bruce Schneier stresses the need for government intervention or supervision regarding security requirements. This leads to a two-pronged approach. Effective IoT security can be developed through manufacturing reform and laws and regulations that support security and privacy. To improve and create a more secure IoT online environment, users need to raise awareness to companies and government decision makers about the critical role of security to protect their privacy and sensitive data. As manufacturers may rethink how they develop the latest IoT devices, one approach that can guide companies towards conscious best practices is security by design. In essence, this approach focuses on developing security software and frameworks into the design of IoT devices, making security part of the model design rather than an afterthought. Security by design also means accountability by design, allowing for more transparency and trust between users and the devices they are using to share and store personal information. Turning to security professionals and consultants for guidance in developing regulations is also important to avoid conflicts of interest from manufacturers or vendors and ensure that appropriate measures are being enforced. Many countries are creating regulatory groups and organizations with the goal of IoT security. The Electronic Privacy Information Center in the United States, the General Data Protection Regulation in the EU, and individual countries including Japan, Canada, Mexico, and Australia have addressed the topic of data governance and are taking steps towards creating a formal IoT regulatory framework. The GDPR and its forthcoming e-privacy regulation will place the responsibility on data controllers to protect the personal data of users and notify users of breaches relating back to the accountability aspect of security by design approach. No industry improves the safety and security of its products and services without being compelled by government regulation. By the same token, companies need to abide by OSHA regulations to protect employees, food safety regulations are in place and regulated by the FDA, and car manufacturers aim for high safety ratings and require safety features like airbags. Think of security for IoT as an airbag or protective equipment. As IoT develops, there will need to be laws and regulations in place for the standardization of data across platforms, increased privacy policies and procedures, and heightened security for users of IoT devices. The goal is to make security a priority and a requirement for manufacturers and technology companies. However, a successful method for governmental intervention will most likely come in the form of an economic and technical incentive that rewards companies for upholding security standards and building cybersecurity into its products, while punishing those companies that do not. Schneier also argues to this point, calling for a new federal agency to be created that researches, advises, and coordinates responses to threats. The challenge and the goal for IoT forensics is to acknowledge that every single device created, every new sensor that is deployed, and every single byte that is synchronized with an IoT environment has the potential of being vital to an IoT investigation. Thus, investigators need to have the correct specialized tools and techniques and procedures to secure IoT networks and examine the residual data of a compromised IoT environment. The goal of IoT forensics should be to create a framework that is based on the correlation of data and metadata of IoT devices. Traditional tools, methods, and procedures can be applied to IoT forensics. However, investigators need to be wary and attentive of the unique needs and demands of an online IoT environment. To investigate and uncover evidence in a cybercrime perpetrated in an IoT system, an investigator needs to be able to identify evidence and vulnerabilities in the system and understand the characteristics and nature of the IoT devices, along with the networked connections and infrastructure where the data resides.